بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعزائي المشاهدين، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نرحب بكم في برنامج نزاهة. نحن نسجل هذه الحلقات مع شخصيات عالمية، ليست فقط سعودية أو عربية، وإنما شخصيات من دول أوروبية. اليوم يسعدنا في هذا البرنامج أن نستضيف السيدة إيميلدا دونلوب، وهي رئيسة منظمة بيرل. ستحدثنا لأن هي جاءت لتحضر الندوة التي تقيمها الهيئة الوطنية لمكافحة الفساد نزاهة. سيدة إيميلدا، أهلا وسهلا بك في نزاهة في المملكة العربية السعودية. السؤال الذي أريد أن أطرحه، أنت رئيسة منظمة بيرل، حدثينا ما هي هذه المنظمة. What is Pearl?
So the Pearl Initiative is a not-for-profit organization that has been set up by a group of GCC business leaders.
Great.
So the initiative came from prominent business leaders from Saudi Arabia, from the United Arab Emirates, from Qatar, Oman, Kuwait. And the idea is that it's an alliance of the private sector to persuade the wider business community to adopt higher standards of accountability and transparency. It's based at the American University of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates, and we have been launched 2 years ago with the United Nations Office for Partnerships.
Yes.
But the driving force is business leaders in the region, by business, for business. We carry out research, we publish reports to shed light on what corporate practices are in areas such as corporate governance, anti-bribery and corruption, transparency and reporting. And we hold roundtables for business people as well to share good practices and talk about how to improve those practices in the private sector. And we also work with universities so
Great.
that our students, who are the business leaders of tomorrow, are learning, and integrity is part of their business education.
جميل. سنتحدث عن كل شيء، ولكننا نريد أن نعرف شيئا عن إيميلدا. من هي إيميلدا؟ كل هذه الخبرات الطويلة أكيد لك ماضي وحاضر وإن شاء الله مستقبل كبير. Who is Imelda? Who are you?
So I've lived in the United Arab Emirates for 10 years.
Yes.
I'm originally British. My background, I was an engineer originally actually, and have worked all around the world as an engineer. And before I came to the region, I was a director at the World Economic Forum. So I was doing a lot of work at the intersection of business and society in areas such as this, looking at the role the private sector can take to make the world a better place and contribute to social issues. And I think that one of the areas that the private sector that believes through the Pearl Initiative is that if we have higher corporate standards of accountability and transparency, this will translate into a more competitive regional economy that is growing more, and it's providing more jobs for our youth and for the young people of the region. And it's that fundamental pillar of a competitive economy that we think accountability and transparency can contribute to.
Very nice. What activities does Pearl Initiative run in the world and in Saudi Arabia in particular?
So we have produced research in areas such as governance practices in family firms in the Gulf region. We do a lot of work on producing case studies of good practices that are working here in the region, because we believe that if companies are to think about what can be successful and contribute to business success here, then it's necessary to look at case studies of what companies here in Saudi Arabia and in the Gulf are doing. So I do spend a fair amount of time in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia because obviously it's a very important economy in the region. We've just done a very interesting project in Saudi Arabia for business students at universities right across the kingdom. In the last semester, students were challenged to research and write case studies of good practices in Saudi Arabian companies in areas of integrity practices and in corporate reporting practices. And we had many case studies submitted from students in the kingdom. And 2 weeks ago, we held the award ceremony. The case studies were judged.
Which university did they mention? هل ذكروا الجامعات التي
all across the kingdom. So the winning student team was a team of 3 female students from Dar Al Hekmah College in Jeddah. And we also had case studies submitted from Prince Sultan University. Their case studies, I think, came second. King Saud University, a team from there, their case study
all
came
females,
first. They were all female students.
Right.
We are going to publish those best case studies, the 6 or 7 best, in a book at the end of this year and distribute it widely across to business leaders and to universities. Because we think it's a very important way for students to really think about what does integrity mean in the workplace, and to have to think about it, talk to companies about what it means. And it's generated a lot of interest. So this was the first time we've run it, was only in Saudi Arabia. And from next year, we are going to run it across the region because it was so successful.
So, ماذا كانت النتيجة? What was the result?
The result is that firstly, students have written fantastically well-researched and well-written case studies on practices like, for example, the winning case study is about the transparent reporting of a private hospital company in Jeddah. That even though that company is not listed and is not required to produce a corporate annual report encompassing things like environmental, social, governance factors, they've produced a very good report. And there's a lot we can learn about how they did that and what the business case is for that. There were other case studies that were written on the implementation of code of ethics. If you want to have ethical practices in a company, what should that look like? How does the process work? How do you embed those values right throughout the company? Which is very related to what we're talking about in this summit today.
You've been involved with women all around the world.
Yes.
And you met Saudi women, and
yes.
She had accomplished so many great things.
Yes.
And we have an expression that I told you about.
Yes.
First of all, do you think that women can fight corruption without the help of her brothers or fathers, men?
I think that it's true what you say. I have met fantastically talented and motivated women in Saudi Arabia and in other parts of the world who very much are driven by wanting to work to improve their country and their economy, and are very dedicated to doing that for the love of their country. And I think that's a fantastic thing.
Yes.
And I think there's a huge pool of talent there that really can be used. And I think that was demonstrated in the case study competition. The quality, the caliber of the female student teams was great. Whether women are particularly any better at fighting corruption than men, I don't know. There's no data on that. I don't know.
Okay, Imelda, you also are involved with anti-corruption and integrity. If I want you to give me definition for anti-corruption and definition for integrity.
So we very much look at integrity and anti-corruption. We are working with the private sector to improve. Now, what that means for a company is that they have to have a very strong set of values. Everything to do with anti-corruption is about having a strong set of values that runs throughout the organization and that comes from the top leadership of the organization. The top leadership has to say, we have a zero tolerance approach to corruption, And we will make sure that we are implementing the policies, the code of conduct that is communicating to our employees and to our suppliers how we would like them to behave, because it's a translation of our values through to the behavior required. And that means in areas such as procurement, sales, every function throughout the organization has to have a very clear view of the company values and the company policy and abide by those policies. Now, obviously, one thing that was said today that's very, very important is it's about prevention. It's making sure that you have the behavior that is an anti-bribery, anti-corruption behavior, and then making sure that that you have a system by which you can detect any aberrations of that policy, and that you can enforce, that you take action if you find something. And that's not just within the organization, but it's within business partners and suppliers as well. Many companies say to their main suppliers, this is our code of conduct, and we want you to apply it the same level of code of conduct. And we've done a lot of work at the Pearl Initiative with family firms in the Gulf region. And we have found that many family firms, which are now huge conglomerates in the region, have been founded by the original founder on the basis of a very strong set of values. And as the transition of many family firms is from the second generation or to the third generation, and for example, it's more complex, there are many more family members involved, that translation of those true values into internal audit, policies, procedures is necessary to translate those original values through a much more complex organization.
Imelda, one of your colleague here mentioned something that men, they come at the top of committed crime and corruption, other things, while women is very low percentage. Is it the reason because men are owning a lot of companies and involving with many jobs and women not? Is this the reason, you think?
I don't know. I haven't seen those figures, so I haven't seen the data to be able to really comment in too much detail on that. But I think the point you make is, I don't think there is necessarily an absolute difference in the genders and their approach to business or to any management role. But I think you're right that in the current situation, there are more men in senior positions in organizations than there are women. So naturally, it's going to fall out that way, I guess.
This is the reason.
Yeah.
30 women enter as Shura, Majlis
Yes.
Shura. You heard a lot about the Saudi women outside of the kingdom.
Yes.
But you've been here for a while and you
Yes.
observed exactly the advancement and accomplishment that women.
Yes.
What do you think of this step that the custodian of the two Holy Mosques, King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz, offered the women to take this role?
Well, I mean, personally, it's a move that I think is very important, and I welcome it hugely. I think it shows great vision and insight. As I said, I think there's a pool of fantastic talent there that can be used for the good of the country. I think that this is something that's women in positions of management is something that's not just being debated here, it's being debated all around the world. There are conversations going on everywhere, in Europe, for example, about setting quotas, perhaps for the number of women on boards, on company boards, for example. And the reason that is something that's being debated at the moment is that from a company governance point of view, if you think about the board of a company, you want that board to be making good decisions, and you want it to be focusing on the strategy and the future of the company. And it's generally accepted that more diverse boards generate better discussion, different points of view, more perspectives, and therefore better decisions for the company. So we have found in our work on corporate governance that there's a huge move towards companies and organizations wanting to make their boards much more dynamic. And that can mean adding independent directors onto boards to bring in different perspectives, different experiences, possibly from other parts of the world, but also diversity in terms of possibly having that mix of some women on boards as well would bring a more of a variety of discussion and decision making on boards. And there's very good research in other parts of the world. In North America, for example, there is absolute evidence that the most diverse boards, with more women on those boards, perform financially better. Great. So it's a sign that diversity works.
You have visited the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as you said, many times, many years ago. Now let's talk about the national anti-corruption and integrity in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It's a new situation, just 2 years and few months, but it accomplished so many things yet to go. In your opinion, you work or you have visited or you met or you attended many symposium to other associations in the world that fight corruption and protect the integrity. What do you think of the national anti-corruption integrity in Saudi Arabia?
I mean, I'm very impressed by the forum that I've seen today. To me, it's a sign that the National Anti-Corruption Commission is reaching out to the private sector proactively and is wanting to help the private sector to be more able to prevent corruption within the private sector. And that is a very good thing. It's good to be proactive and to have these discussions between the private sector and government entities, because it's good to be doing that rather than just focusing on investigation after the event. Prevention is obviously the best way to go. And we have participated, for example, we were at the World Economic Forum Middle East Summit in the Dead Sea in Jordan, actually last week, and participated in a session in which the National Anti-Corruption Commission, Nazaha, was there as well. And that conversation between the private sector and the government entity is a very, it's good if that's a productive discussion. The government entity, such as Nazaha, is setting the framework, the country level framework within which businesses have to operate. But it's up to the private sector, it's up to businesses to make sure that they're implementing necessary practices, such as internal audit that we're talking about today, that work to stamp out corruption as well.
Yes, Nazaha is protecting the people, helping the people, and also fighting anti-corruption or corruption and protecting Nazaha. What is the role of the people toward national anti-corruption?
Well, I mean, people form the basis of any organization, and I think there was one very good point made today actually by one of the speakers, which was that we need that multi-forum approach, that actually if we really want to stamp out corruption, you need to have government leadership, you need to have private sector leadership, but you do also need to be involving the public as well in that process, in that fight against corruption, whether that's through reaching out to the public directly or through civil society, for example, representatives of what people think. And I think that three-way approach is a very important approach. So I think you're absolutely right.
Okay, Imelda, we come to the end of our episode or program. We would like you a short advice to the Saudi women and how she can cooperate with national anti-corruption in Saudi Arabia.
Well, I see, as I said, I've met fantastically talented Saudi women, and I think they are making increasing contributions to the world of business and to the world of governments and ministries. And you see women taking increasingly responsible posts in all these organizations. And I think it's very, very encouraging, and it's great to see. And I hope that it continues.
Great. On behalf of National Anti-Corruption and the Saudi women, we would like to take this opportunity to say thank you very, very much.
شكرا.
شكرا. أعزائي المشاهدين، كانت ضيفتنا هي السيدة إيميلدا دونلوب، وهي رئيسة منظمة بيرل. حتى نلتقي في حلقة قادمة مع ضيف أو ضيفة، نقول شكرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.